Now let's swing across the table. I'd like to welcome Clément Bonneroyo here with Media Watch. And we're going to start with something that I find personally fantastic. A hashtag that's been trending on Twitter and Facebook these past few days. It's Balance ton porc, which literally means rat on your dirty old man.
Absolutely. We've talked about it on Media Watch yesterday. There have been a lot of interesting reactions on social media, and this trend has actually, you'd be surprised, prompted a lot of men to reconsider their attitudes towards women. This user, for example, on Twitter, saying that reading all of your tweets, I realise that a majority of women have faced sexual harassment. It's scary. I don't get it. This other user, meanwhile, wondering whether there is anything he can do to help women and to help solve the problem. Now, should we really be surprised by all this? No, says this journalist on a French website, Medium. She says we're being hypocritical. She reminds us that according to to some figures, 100% of women say they've been sexually harassed one way or another during their lives. If you're surprised that so many of your friends are speaking out, maybe it's because you never really paid attention to what they were saying.
Well, not everyone is happy with the Balance ton porc hashtag. We've heard French economy minister criticise it earlier on. Others have also added to the wave of criticism. Can you tell us more about that? Yes,
absolutely. Philosopher Raphael Enthoven, who's quite a famous philosopher here in France, also quite controversial, took to Twitter. He wrote, "The problem is that a snitch will always be a snitch, no matter how good or bad his or her intentions." Other commentators have also added to the wave of criticism. One of them is Elisabeth Lévy on the conservative website Causeur. She says speaking out freely is not the same thing as publicly naming and shaming individuals. And she also warns that Twitter is no substitute for justice.
Well, yes, I have to agree with that. There needs to be a responsible way to hold people accountable. But it still sounds there's no easy way out for women.
Well, no, there isn't. And as this user on Twitter puts it, if you don't talk, it's wrong. If you talk immediately, it's wrong. If you talk without giving the name of your attacker, it's wrong. If you give the name of your attacker, it's also wrong. If you don't use the correct words, it's wrong. In other words, we should let women decide how they want to talk about their experiences and not blame them for refusing to talk. Meanwhile, some users on social media remind us that there are other issues that women should draw attention to. Take a look at this cartoon from this morning's Le Parisien. The man on the left says, "So now you can't joke around with your female co-workers anymore." The one in the middle says, "Let's just hire men instead." And the one on the right concludes, "Aren't you crazy? We'd have to pay them 20% more."
Well, moving on, today marks the 56th anniversary of the massacre of hundreds of Algerians in Paris at the hands of police here. Between 200 and 300 peaceful protesters were pushed into the River Seine and drowned.
Indeed, and 5 decades later, the wounds are still open. Take a look at this tweet. October 17th, 1961, a peaceful demonstration turned into a tragedy we will not forget. Some users also condemned the way that French papers reported the event at the time. You see here the front pages of Le Parisien and Le Figaro both at the time blamed the violence on Algerian terrorists. Le Parisien reporting that only 2 people died that night.
Well, that's interesting because still now many are saying that France never fully acknowledged its role in the massacre and are now calling on the French President Emmanuel Macron to do so.
Well, as surprising as it may sound, François Hollande was the first president to speak out about this shortly after winning the election in 2012. He referred to what happened in 1961 as a massacre, but obviously stopped short of blaming French authorities for it. And I wanted to have a look at what Algerian papers are saying about this. Al Watan says that France and Algeria must work hand in hand to face and accept their shared history. All that we should ask for is the truth, the paper writes, and nothing but the truth.
Well, we end in Somalia. An explosion killed at least 300 people on Saturday, one of the worst in its history. Many people are saying the story has been underreported in Western media.
Absolutely. You can take a look at this cartoon. You see a man lying on the ground. He's holding a banner that reads, "I am all alone, I am Somalia." Now, despite the perceived lack of Western solidarity on social platforms, Somalis have decided to take matters into their own hands and use the power of social media to mobilize support. They've set up a website, Gourmad 252, to help identify the missing on social media. They've also set up a GoFundMe page to help collect funds for a free ambulance service to help the affected. And as you can see, they've reached their initial target of 200,000 Swedish krona, so around 21,000 euros.